Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind. I hope you're all good. And I hope that you are excited about this episode because I am chatting to the wonderful Tash Koster-Thomas. Tash is a DEI consultant, educator, public speaker. She also runs the blog Breaking the Distance. It's essentially a travel blog that she runs with her wife Martha. And she shares all about their travel experiences, their journey together, their life together, experiencing different cultures, and how they experience the world as a queer couple as they go around. It also covers things around representation, inclusivity. And I get to work with Tash on a regular basis through my role at We Create Space. Tash is a regular moderator, facilitator, and guest speaker. And so I get to work with her loads, which I love. But I was really excited to dive into her origin story. And it's here. We cover loads of different topics from her journey into DEI through to life before what she's doing now. And this is an area that I was really, really excited about, and it did not disappoint. So here's the episode. Enjoy and let me know what you think. Hey Tash, it is great to see you. Welcome to Pause and Rewind.
It's amazing to be here. I love this. We get the chance to sit down, just have a good old chat.
I know. I mean, I love working with you, but it's always kind of shop with We Create Space. And mind you, we do squeeze in some random chats during our prep calls.
We definitely have over the years, like managed to squeeze in quite a bit. But no, it is always like the 3 minutes before a client joins a call and then the 5 minutes at the end before one of us has to drop off for something else. So yeah.
I love it, but I do love the fact that, with working in DEI, we get to inject quite a lot of self into it, a lot of personality. I love it when your little baby girl Sutton pops up on the calls. But it's all fun.
Always. Yeah, she's been on a surprising amount of calls actually, considering she's only, well, currently under two. But yeah, she's she's definitely cutting a career in D&I, that's for sure.
It's a little start in the making. Tash, I always start with a big question. As you know, I'd love to know. Tell me, what does the world look like for Tash Coster-Thomas right now?
Oof, that's a big question. It's also really weird to hear my name in full. What does the world look like for Tash Coster-Thomas right now? I mean, there's lots of different sides to that question. I think let's start with personally. Personally, it's been a real evolution over the past 2 years, especially since having Sutton. And so I think personally, I'm just now starting to rebalance. They say that postpartum, really the first stage of postpartum actually lasts for 2 years. It takes up to 2 years for a woman's hormones to sort of regulate again and for her to start redeveloping that sense of self. Because baby doesn't need you as much as in the first few months. And I think personally, I'm definitely feeling that now. It has taken those 2 years for sure. You can't skip it, I don't think. And then I guess professionally, which also links into socially, I'm really grateful that I have a 2-year-old that I can absorb myself into, because I think sometimes when we look at the landscape socially, it can feel actually quite overwhelming. And I'm always just trying to really connect with the people that give me energy, that support me, and that I can support them. And there's kind of that reciprocal transfer of energy. Because I think that I mean, there's never really a time that the world isn't a scary place, but I think
Mm,
particularly right now, politically, socially, environmentally, literally the world has been on fire,
yes,
for the past few months. And so I think I'm just even more sort of trying to really focus on what I can control. Um, I think Tash before steps out into the world, like, I want to take on everything. And now I'm really having to recognize that it's really important that I focus my energy because I can't always give 100% of me to that side of things. I've got a little person that needs me and needs me to be able to show up for them first and foremost. So it's what is within my control? What can I have impact and influence over? Uh, in a in a nutshell, I guess that's what it feels like.
absolutely. And in terms of that control, how much of that time and energy goes into um creating a barrier and protection for Sutton, in terms of, you've we it's come up time, and whenever I ask this question on the podcast, right, the common words that come up when I ask what the world looks like right now, you've said on fire, we've got a shit show, hellhole, like all these kind of like,
Yeah, I can
very,
believe it.
very kind of like quite dark, because it does feel quite dark. It's relentless, right?
Yeah.
How much of that time and energy goes into protecting and safeguarding yourselves for Sutton, your future together, her future?
Yeah, it's always this catch-22 between I want to get out there and do the work and be on the socials all the time and be advocating 24/7 in order to create a world for her that is better than some
Mm,
of the things we see now. However, recognizing that that makes me somewhat useless in the immediate. And so it's constantly this boundary. It's interesting. My wife and I were talking about it the other day, and after the Trump inauguration and the speech and what was being said and all the things that were coming out, whenever there's a sort of a big moment like that that's happening politically, socially, politically, that really impacts me based on my fundamental core values, I sort of go in on myself. And over the years, it's funny, we were talking about it because this is the first time we've really recognized what's actually happening. But over the years, my wife Marta has always really struggled with who I become in the immediate aftermath during these types of things. And sort of, I'm very much like wanting to research. I go into research mode and reading, and
mm,
I'm really wanting to speak out, but at the detriment to myself. And I really feel it, particularly since having Sutton. I feel it on a whole different level. It's like my heart and my emotions are wide open for that. And there's less of that natural barrier there and that natural armor.
yeah,
And I kind of disappear for 2 days into all of the emotions of it. And so this time was the first time that we sort of recognized that and called attention to it beforehand. And she sort of recognized, I know there's a part of this that you need to do, but I'm also going to tell you that you need to armor up whilst you do it.
yeah,
Um, and so, yeah, it's always that balance of, I want the world to be a better place for you, but I also want to be able to be here for you now and be a better
yeah.
person for you now. Um, I haven't completely figured it out, but this felt like a better balance this time around.
Hey, listen, it's all growth, right? And self-awareness is absolutely
Exactly
key in
that.
these moments. You're not the only person that goes in on it. My husband, whenever anything big like this happens, really does kind of go into himself, and it's the world feels like it's falling apart in that
Yeah,
moment. But it's
yeah,
sometimes hard to it's sometimes easy to lose sight of the fact that we have to live for now,
yeah,
and in the moment, and know that, tap into that joy, right?
exactly
When
that.
you can, yeah.
Which is what's so magical about having a under two who has
Yes.
no idea what's
Yeah.
going on because she's still coming over and bringing her toys and wanting to learn how to jump and doing really
Yes.
just hilarious things. Like yesterday, I was walking along the beach with her, and she just stopped in the middle of the beach at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and decided to start singing the Hokey Cokey, and doing all the actions in the middle of a
That's going to get you out of
freezing
any rut
cold
you're in.
Margate beach. I've got her being like, in, out, in, oh, rah, rah, rah. So, that brings just natural joy right there.
She's like, Trump who?
Literally that. I don't care. Where are my blueberries?
I love that. I love that. All of this for you is obviously amplified because of your professional life as well, and what
Yes.
you do with
Yes.
KT Consulting, Breaking the Distance, and generally your speaking gigs, your education. you know, so
Yeah.
you don't just get it in the personal life effect of impact of it, you get it professionally as well. And having to navigate that right now, working in DEI is fucking tough.
Isn't it just? And I think that's also part of the reason as to why I feel like, I mean, I think you have to acknowledge the privilege you have if you're somebody going, oh, well, yeah, that's really sad what's happening over there. But, I spoke to somebody the other day who is American. They live here in the UK and have done for several years, but they are American. And they were like, we were just voice noting. It's another one of the mums. And we were voice noting back and forth. And she's like, oh, how are you doing? And it was literally the 21st. And I was like, well, good, but considering everything that's going on in the US, wow, like really feeling the impact. How are you doing? I know it must be really hitting you hard. And she came back and was like, what's going on? I don't actually know. My social
Wow.
media doesn't really show me anything. Like, I know that obviously I think it's inauguration day, but like, do tell me, update me. And I was like, wow. Wow, what a beautiful place that is to be. Just ignorance is bliss, I guess. And so I never, can you imagine if I turned up to a session and on, like, for example, anti-racism or, gender equity, and people were like, considering the current situation, I was like, what? Educate me.
Yeah.
I just can't do that. And it impacts so directly into the work. The systems impact the work I'm doing, but then even more so now when we're seeing this rollback of D&I. I use that in inverted commas, rollback of D&I, and what that looks like for my work. I personally don't feel the rollback at all. This
Mm.
past couple of weeks, I have been inundated with emails of,
Yes.
can we work with you? We're having this event. We want you to come and speak at it. We recognize that this is happening. How do we protect? So I feel like it's all noise rather than
Yeah.
actual fact. But it does mean that there is a certain level where I think a lot of people would just switch off from it and would step away, where I just don't have that ability to do so because it's part of the work I do, but also the work is part of who I am. So
Yes, it's really hard to separate, right?
it's just all one.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've spoken about it a lot in therapy
Yeah,
about
no,
how do you.
I get it. Like, because, I feel like I spend my day talking about queerness, DEI. I spend my hobbies doing it, running a queer sober clubbing event, this podcast. Um,
Yeah,
it's really hard to separate those identities as a husband, a wife for you,
yeah.
and my creative output, my professional output, it's hard
It's
hard
all one of
to
the same. It is all
yeah.
one of the same. Absolutely.
Do you ever think what life would have been like if you'd have gone down another route? Like,
Well, it's funny you say that because I did, and my original sort of path in life was, and I'm sure we'll get into it, was very different from the one I'm on right now. However, I know that the one I'm in right now brings me actually the most fulfillment.
yeah,
Um, and so, previous paths I've been on are very much about my own, I guess, gratification in a way. And, if you feel good as a result of it, well, that's just an extra bonus. Whereas now my focus is other people. And actually, sometimes it's very much at the detriment to myself and has been. I've had
yeah,
experiences where it's been a real negative impact for me to show up in this space.
yeah,
But that has helped to positively support somebody else. Um, and so, yeah, I think that whilst it would in some ways be easier, I feel like there's never a morning where really I wake up going, what am I doing with my life? I
yeah.
never have that feeling. And I know so many people who maybe have what would on the outside be the best job or earn the most money and et cetera, still wake up every morning with that feeling. And I never, ever have it, ever.
But I mean that's gorgeous, and it goes to show we might say, and we're probably on the same wavelength with this. Oh, ignorance is bliss. What a beautiful place to be in terms of that unawareness. But actually, when it came down to it, we wouldn't want that.
No,
No,
absolutely. Definitely
no.
not.
Tash, I'm so excited to dive into your origin story, and we're going to dive in, definitely certainly hear some of those paths that you were on before you got to where you are now. For now, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Here we go. Take me back. Tell me all about little Tash.
Little Tash. I mean, I like to think that actually Little Tash is pretty similar to Big Tash, to be honest. I always been confident. Um, I've always been, I guess, comfortable in the spotlight. And it's funny going back through the time of like thinking about school and just how I was seen at school or in those environments. I was all the reoccurring theme was Natasha is a natural born leader. Um, and so I feel like there's so much of me that's actually very much the same. I would say, I guess it's just youth and the beauty of youth in that way. There's a lot of things that I probably was completely unaware of. When I think of what I do now, there's a lot of things about myself that I wasn't aware of and how other people were perceiving me in the world. But in terms of, I had a really beautiful childhood. I really did. And I loved education. I was creative, but I also really enjoyed certainly primary school. And I think it was my primary school that gave me a real love of education. I wouldn't say I always loved all of being at secondary school, which is most. But I didn't mind being there. I didn't mind studying. I didn't mind writing. Um, and I was relatively good at it. I wasn't the best and top graded in the class, but I went to a grammar school and I didn't struggle. I'm neurotypical. There's a lot of reasons that there's a lot of ways in which I held privilege. I had a really supportive family, my mum and dad, particularly my dad, I think gave me a really good example of how to see school and education. He was very similar as well, is that he was very good, very intelligent. I believe he told me he was Mensa when he was younger. But he was also, I think, one of the cool kids actually when he was at school, and would also tell me all of the naughty things he did. So it wasn't like if you're good at school, it means that you're this. And in order to be fun and being seen as this, you have to make out that you're stupid. It was never that. It was like you can be both and you can embody the best of both. Um, and yeah, they were both really supportive. I developed a real love of reading from a very, very young age. I always used to remember reading to dad on the way to school, reading my books on the way to school to him in the car. And bless him, he would hear such disjointed stories. It'd be like I'd read on the way in, read lots while at school and on the way back on the bus, and then he'd hear like the next day, and I'm 5 chapters down the story. And that was kind of, yeah, a lot of outdoors, it was very physical as a child as well. And I think that very much followed into my adulthood. But, Sundays were always going on long bike rides with my dad or going swimming. I played a lot of sports and I was good at sports as well. And I got enjoyment out of it. And I danced. I did a lot of dancing, which led to a career in that from a very early age.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more about that. It's so funny that on this podcast, when we talk to people, so many people say that they do feel aligned with the little them now, as
Mm.
they kind of come into their own and self-acceptance and awareness.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I remember always being referred to as a tomboy as a kid growing up. And it's not that I saw that as a negative thing, but
Mm.
I used to play with my best friend was our next door neighbor, Henry, and we were inseparable. And I used to be, the girl that was up in the trees. And I look back and I was the kid that was like, Henry can take his top off while he's playing football, so can I. And it was kind of
Way.
that energy at like 5, 6, 7 years old, and there was a long time, I think, after I'd come out. And I guess just this is a lot of the reason why I don't refer to myself in adulthood or didn't for a long time as a lesbian and when I found the term
Mm.
queer, I leaned into that because it then became almost like this negative thing to be gay and a tomboy felt
Yeah.
like a cliche. And so I really sort of pushed away from that. And it's now that I kind of embracing it again. And actually, I've one of the key things you won't be able to see because it's a podcast, but I've cut my hair really short. And it's something that I've never had my hair this short before in my life. And I think it's part of the reason is because of, that my having long curls sort of gave me a sense of femininity when I would be perceived by so many others as having that boyish nature,
Yeah.
liking to do physical things and sports even as an adult. And I felt like if I cut my hair, well, then it's just even more in that stereotype. And it's funny now, I kind of seem to be reclaiming the old Tash in that way and being comfortable
Yeah.
in that.
I think there's a lot of that amongst queer women and lesbians and bisexual women needing to reclaim that and kind of really actively challenging some of those really harmful stereotypes and
Yeah.
perceptions and such. Yeah, it's still so prevalent, right? It's still so
Yeah,
prevalent.
absolutely.
What are perhaps some of, you've shared some of your favorite memories growing up. What's your favorite anecdote that you've heard about yourself?
I mean, one that comes to mind, it's only because my dad was sending me some pictures earlier this week actually for something. And there is a picture of me. Well, mum told me about this photo shoot that she took to, and I feel like it sums me up in a way. And it was a photo shoot that she was having, and I think I'm about three, maybe 3 or 4. And I was a real daddy's girl growing up. We were like best friends. And so my dad wasn't there at this photo shoot. He was supposed to be there, but he couldn't make it. He was working. And the whole time, the photographer's trying to get me to laugh, trying to get me to smile, and I'm not having any of it. I'd been crying most of the morning. Anyway, eventually they just took the picture. And I have got like, when kids do that real like pouty, the bottom lip starts to come out, and you can see they're on the verge of tears, and there's like, and that is the picture. And around it, it just says Susan's greetings, and it was for Christmas. And mum was like, you weren't smiling for anybody. It didn't matter what we did, but it was going to be on your terms, and this wasn't on your terms. And so therefore you weren't going to do it. And I kind of feel like, yes, probably a little bit of that still in me
Oh, I love
now.
that. I love that. Got a real sense of what you were like at school. Do you remember what your kind of who Tash was as you went into your teenage years? Obviously, quite formative changes in bodies, realizations about kind of like maybe sexual identity, who we are. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I remember sort of my coming out story, roll of eyes, being from sort of around the age of 14, 15. But one of the things that I really remember looking back on particularly in those teenage years at school, is so many of my friends, the people I speak to in those years, had like a best friend at school.
Mm.
This was my person. We were like besties, and I have that now, and it's actually somebody from school. But when I was physically at school, I was kind of this floater. I remember
Mm.
being friends with lots of different groups of people. And it wasn't that I was particularly connected or associated with the girls who love sports, or the girls who would be considered the geeks or the goths, or I just kind of floated around everybody and had a friendship and a relationship with everybody. And I very much remember that. And it wasn't till much later actually that I formed those real best friends. This is my bestie, no one else gets this title sort of connections. But yeah, and it was only really sort of thinking back on that, and I was like, oh, it's interesting that I was already, I guess, trying to connect with difference, even to the point of, there's a girl that, it's funny, we share the same birthday, and at school we had conversations, never anything of depth, but years later, every single year we send each other a birthday message on Facebook, like 20 years after we've left school. And I'd probably say the other thing that I really remember people referring to me as, or being, I guess, a key trait of mine, is I was really sarcastic at school, really
Okay.
sarcastic. And it's so funny because I think I've let go of that now. And it used to be to everybody, or to quite
Mm.
like cheeky
Yeah.
sarcastic. And it was kind of a defining characteristic of mine at school. And sometimes it's funny because it's not that anymore. And
No, I've never picked up on that.
that's so funny because it was literally how everybody would refer to me at school. It's, oh my gosh,
Mm.
Tash is so sarcastic. You're so sarcastic. And in some respects, there's a little bit of a badge of honor. I was like funny with it. And I remember when my wife and I first met, that was the equivalent of, the kid that like punches the girl they fancy, right? Like that was my equivalent. I was really sarcastic with her. Um, And that was like, I was like, I used to always say, the more sarcastic I am to you, the more I like you. And it was my way of kind of, if you could take the jokes and you could get on a line with me, then that would build connection for me. But the flip side of that is I remember at school is often being perceived as intimidating or
Right.
scary. And I do think that, I grew up in Plymouth, which is predominantly, well, pretty much only white at the time that I grew up
Yeah.
there. And I was one of very, 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 like, count them on one hand, girls of color in my school. And I think that there was definitely this misinterpretation of my resting bitch face. And a lot of people would say after meeting me, like, oh, you're actually really nice. Oh, you're actually
Yeah.
really lovely. And so I think the sarcasm also didn't help that. I think the sarcasm could also be interpreted at times as probably mean, even though it absolutely wasn't intended that way. It was
Yeah.
just my mouth would speak before my brain had really engaged with just wanted the punchline. The punchline's
Yeah.
there, it's there for the taking. And I was like that from as early as like 7, 8, that kind of sarcasm coming out.
When did it ebb away?
Good question. I mean, I was definitely that in when I met my wife to her, but I think kind of generally, probably, I also remember having a partner before I met my wife who really didn't understand sarcasm. We had a very different, and looking back, I think that there may have been an element of neurodivergence for her. And so it was the first time, I think that relationship was the first time I'd really seen that the potential negative impact of that. But I think it had already started to ebb away before then.
Yeah.
And then maybe really stepping into a D&I space, I
Yes.
just now analyze and my language is so different and I think about things very differently. And so
Yeah.
it's no longer the punchline there.
Yeah. 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 You have to. We talk a lot about kind of like, la the importance of language,
Yeah.
and curiosity centered in kindness. And I guess naturally you couldn't go in all guns blazing with a search for a punchline. And yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
definitely not.
So interesting, the those badges of honor that we wear, that we just shed as we grow. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Speaking about growing, what was the ambition of when I grow up, I want to be? What did you think that looked like?
It was
Because
100%.
DEI is not
It's
is not
not.
something that was around when we were growing up.
No, it was, I want to be a dancer. I want to be a performer. I want to be on the stage. And it was interesting when the primary school I went to, part of the curriculum was actually ballet was compulsory. And it was once a week, a ballet teacher came in and taught us. And I mean, it was baby ballet. We were like 3, but she approached my parents. And I always wonder, was this just a sales pitch just to get people to her private classes, or did she genuinely feel this way? But she came to my parents and said, your daughter has a natural aptitude for dance, and I offer these classes outside of the school, and I run this ballet school, and I think she'd be great in it, etc. And my parents thankfully took her up on it, and were in a position where they could take me. And so for years I went to ballet on a Friday. Me and Dad go for a McDonald's first, and then off to ballet. And but I really genuinely loved going, and I had a genuine love for it. And that sort of what started as just a ballet class evolved into I want to do modern, and I want to do singing, and I want to do acting. And then I started going to a Saturday school. And I think it was then at the point of sort of coming into 12, 13 that I realized this is something you can actually do as a career. And it's not just this fun thing that I do on a Saturday. And I think that was the real shift of 13, 14, where I was also seeing the students a little bit older than me auditioning for dance schools and going to dance colleges. And I'm like, what? You can do this all day, every day, and you don't have to do the schoolwork, and there's no tests, and you just get to do dance exams. Yeah, sign me up for that. And so that was probably the first real, and I got the chance to be in shows, even though they were little ones. And I just really loved being on the stage. It wasn't intimidating. It wasn't scary for me. It was absolute enjoyment to be on the stage and in front of an audience.
So what happens next?
So what happened next is I carried on the academic. I got my A levels, and then when everyone else was saying, "How many UCAS points do you have?" I was like, "I don't care. I'm going to stage school."
Now,
Literally. And I auditioned and I got in, and I did 3 years professional training as a musical theatre performer. And it was exactly that. I was doing ballet every day, singing every day, acting every day. And then I graduated from the college performers and I worked as a professional singer and dancer for, well, from 21 until, I mean, arguably until even now. I was on stage literally at Christmas for a show.
what
Um,
was the show?
it was a Spice Girls show, a Spice Girls tribute. I was giving it Scary Spice just before Christmas. Um, but like my first job, I did Pantos. I went to Madeira and did a long-term contract there. I did 4.5 years on cruise ships as a dancer and a singer. And, you know, it's funny, I was pulling these pictures out the other day for a talk that I'm giving um, students around how to kind of find their purpose in life and how to figure out what they want to do post graduating from university. And so I was really looking at the very non-linear journey that I've taken to get to where I currently am. And I say currently am because who knows where Tash is going to be in another 10 years' time. Um, but yeah, I still like, I don't want to say the happiest days of my life. It's because I actually don't put it as past tense. I still am I am still a performer. And I grappled with that for a bit. If you haven't been on stage for a year, can I still call myself a performer? Can I still call myself a singer and a dancer? And I was like, yeah, you can. Because it's massively a part of something that I do. And I see it as right now as a little bit of a gap where I'm being a mum and that's taking up a
Yeah.
lot of time. And so there isn't that additional space to pursue this thing. Um, but yeah, I've done a Lucozade advert. I've done, as I said, I've been on ships for 4.5 years. I have gone to Romania as a Spice Girl. I've been um, in a Little Mix tribute for several years, for 4 years. I was in the Spice Girls tribute for 4 years. I've literally performed at festivals with 10,000 people. I've been on the same stage as Bewitched. I was telling really showing my age now. um,
Love that.
Five, well, what's left of them? S Club 7, again,
I
what's
love
left
a
of
bit of
them?
five. Love a bit of five.
Literally, right? Big Brothers, all of those. Been at events with them. Yeah, all of the stuff over the years.
I mean, I've learned something new about you, like right now. Like, I'm loving this. It was there, and I love the fact that you're owning both your roles. You're saying it's not linear, and again, that's such a common thing on this podcast. We learn that careers, life is rarely linear. But you're saying I am a mother, I am a performer, I am a DEI consultant,
Yeah,
I am a public speaker, and being able to wear all of those things. Was there a favorite moment on stage?
that's a really good question. Um, so I'm just going to answer it based on what came to mind the moment you asked that question. And there was a show on, it was the last ship I was on, the Splendor for Carnival, and there's a show called The Beat. And I don't know what it was about this show, but I just loved this show. It was everything that you wanted. It was all singing, all dancing. The band was on stage with us. It was like a platform stage. And I loved the dance track that I had in it, all the numbers that I was in. And it was like really high adrenaline, lots of costume changes in it. And just the end of it was that we would run out of backstage. We'd have to run down the stairs. We'd run along a guest corridor, like room, beds corridor, through a doorway that then led us to underneath the stage. And we'd pile onto this platform that then rose up, and the whole entire cast would rise up on the
Wow.
stage with tambourines. And there was like 16 of us with tambourines. Um, Coming up, and it was like this epic like 10, 12 piece band on stage, and it was just always like my favorite moment of that show, but favorite moment of the week was coming up on that stage and just like got the music in me was the same was the track. And that is funny when you asked that question, that was the immediate image that came to mind. I'm sure there were 1,000 others, but I just loved that show. And yeah, enjoyed every single. So often as a performer, when you do the same show over and over and over again, you can be like, yeah, but that one never got old. Um, that and performing as Little Mix at this massive, massive tribute festival in Wales, which is literally 12,000 people camp out. It's like a mini Glastonbury, but for tribute acts. And it's a boiling hot day. And it was like that full, like we felt like we were actually Little Mix. And I'm sure there's a lot of children there that thought we were the real Little Mix, to be honest. And looking out across this field and hearing, it's not my words and not my songs, but hearing an entire audience sing back the song that you're singing. And like, I jumped off, it's the end of the show. I jumped off the edge of the stage and you've got all the people hanging over the barrier, and I literally ran the entire length doing high fives all the way down and back again and back onto the stage. And again, that's another like, oh, love that moment.
That sounds like a moment. I was a teenager in the 90s. I went to see the Spice Girls at Wembley when I was 15. So
Love
that
it.
was 1997. And I've seen them every decade since. Please let me know when you're doing another gig as Mel B. Like,
I will do.
I'm desperate to see you on stage.
Well,
I
people
would
can
absolutely love that.
have a little treat if you go on my Instagram. If you go to tasht.uk, there's actually a lot of footage of me as a Spice Girl and in Little Mix and a few other shows out
I
there as
love
well.
it. I'm
So
gonna check
you
it
can do a
out.
deep dive.
I will be seriously fangirling as I always am with you, to be fair. So we are shaped by our failures as much as our successes. Was there a moment throughout your career, life, that felt like a failure that actually ended up turning out to be a pivotal moment for where you are now?
Yeah, and actually the one that springs to mind, and I don't know that I even saw it necessarily as a failure, but it was definitely I wanted to do this thing and it didn't happen. And that was back in 2000 and I think like 17, 2018, and I was still performing as my main job as well as being a personal trainer because I'm a performer. Why wouldn't you also be a personal trainer? I'm just throwing another career at you there.
Well, hey,
And I was actually auditioning for Hamilton, and I was getting, as in West End, the first cast had done their year and it was coming up to the end of the first year of Hamilton in West End. And I was doing really well. I was getting through round after round. I met the musical director. I met the original choreographer. He came over from the US team, came over and were running the auditions. And at the same time, I was actually I'd auditioned for the group that was Spice Girls and Little Mix. And I remember it got to the point where it was within the same week, I was waiting to hear from both. And everybody's, thinking Hamilton, West End. I'd never been on West End before. It's always anybody going to stage school, they have that dream, whether it's West End or Broadway, it's there somewhere in some capacity. And so this felt like finally it was going to happen. And I'm also a Buddhist. I practice Nichiren Buddhism, which means I chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to essentially connect with my own Buddha nature and the Buddhahood of everybody around me. It's what I often fall back on in times of complete confusion and hell that we're in right now. And at the time, I remember just wanting to kind of leave it to the universe, but I specifically remember chanting around like, where needs a Buddha? Where needs Buddha nature and Buddha energy right now? Where would I be best suited rather than what do I think I want? And within the couple of days, I went to the next Hamilton audition and I didn't get through that round. And like the following day, I got an email from the Spice Girls group to say, we'd love to have you. And I then worked for them for the next 4.5 years, got to go on cruises from, around Europe, got to work across up and down the country, got to have some really shit gigs, but also got some of the most amazing gigs. All of those girls were at my wedding. Like they formed so many of my most incredible performing memories was with that group. And I often think, what would have happened if I went to Hamilton? And I often think I probably just would have been, part of the ensemble. People come, they see the show, they maybe buy the program and they're like, oh yeah, and it's a memory, yes. But instead, I was with this group where, I never forget this mum coming up to us at the end of the show. We're doing a meet and greet, and she was like, my little girl is obsessed with Little Mix. She thinks you're the real thing. Can you just please play along? And to see this little, like, 7-year-old girl beaming because she thinks she's meeting the real Leanne Pinnock and she's having a picture with us. And like, I got to really, really connect with my audiences and get to really interact with them in a way that if I'd been in Hamilton, you walk out a stage door and no one really knows who you are, which for some people is perfect and they want that. But for me, I really love the fact that I got to connect with humans and really be in that. And yeah, I think that I then got to have a much longer, potentially sort of performing career in that sense because of going that route. But it was, I don't necessarily see it as a failure, but it was a real pivotal moment for me, definitely.
Thanks for sharing. And I think that connection is something that you bring to all of your output.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always loved growing up is I've liked to connect, meet people, talk to new people. My wife always jokes when we go out, back in the day when we used to go out, it's like, oh, typical Tash will go somewhere and then I lose her for half the night because she's off speaking to somebody in the toilets, or she's she's made like 1,000 new friends and I just don't see her. And at the end of the night, I'm like, how was your night? Was it good? Because I didn't see you.
Ditto. Always making friends in the toilets. Sometimes with toilet attendants. I don't know what it was. I'd always make friends with toilet attendants. Or in the smoking area. Just yeah.
That's
sorry,
me.
Where are my friends? No idea.
Exactly. I don't even smoke, but I'm in the smoking area making friends.
I gave up, and actually one of the things I miss about it is the smoking area because it was just the most fun. But yeah, get out there anyway. I mean, this brings you on to the next point is, what was the moment where you found your voice, maybe destination for now in inclusion?
Yeah. I think looking back, there were kind of some key moments that all correlated together. I think when my wife and I started breaking the distance, which originally for us started out as just this fun place for us to connect. We were long distance at the time, and also a place for us to share our experiences as a queer couple, particularly traveling as a queer couple. That was kind of its original, I guess, story, its origin story. And then very quickly, we realized actually it was becoming a safe space for other queer people around the world. And they were seeing in us a version of how their lives could potentially be. And whilst maybe their immediate environment was saying, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing this, this is wrong, we were an example of actually, this is what it can be, and you're right. And don't ever question that. And so that was probably like the first point of recognizing how my actions could have a positive impact on other people, and my words and me showing up and talking about my experience could have positive impact for people. Then I would say it sort of expanded, honestly, for me to really land it and center it in D&I, and the first real experience of D&I as I do it today was actually during the pandemic and after the murder of George Floyd and the immediate aftermath of that. And it was the first time I think I'd started to develop the language, but that I felt really compelled to have a voice about that moment. I also think the fact that that was happening and the person I was then married to, no, we weren't yet married, no, going to marrying, was also a white person who was trying to understand what was going on. And so the conversations we were having, and we were already confident enough on our platform to have those conversations publicly. Again, I really saw the impact of those, but I really suddenly realized that people wanted to hear what I had to say and sort of not necessarily agreed with it, but were interested in what I had to say and found value in it. And so those two sort of moments combined. And then I think just my natural sense of injustice makes me infuriated. I know that not everybody has the experience that I've had growing up in terms of the support, but I cannot understand why people hate or dislike or discriminate against on another person that they don't even know based on an assumption of a characteristic that they have. I find it absolutely infuriating. Um, and so I think all of those things, the fact also that we were in this pressure cooker of a pandemic, I
Mm.
wonder if we weren't in a pandemic at the time, would I have felt so compelled to have such a public voice on the matter? I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I would have been busy in my day to day on stage, and so I don't have space and time for this. Um, but yeah, all of those things were the things that really
Yeah.
shoved me into D&I.
I think so many of us working in this space can relate to a lot of what we do being born out of a natural sense of injustice. Like
Yeah,
that's mine has. But you're so right. 20 is it 2020? Yeah, 2020 was a real pivotal moment in terms of the language and the terminology to be able to step up and show up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it was also the first time that we were really seeing the conversations happening so publicly. And I was like, I
Yeah.
want to engage in this
Yeah.
conversation. I want to be a
Yes.
part of it.
Of course, they'd been happening for years, but
Yeah,
it was just with the flames that came with 2020. You know,
yeah.
it was so heightened, so heightened. Tell me about someone who has shaped you the most along the way.
I mean, I do have to say my dad.
Yeah.
Um, I there are a million other influences, but yeah, it has to be dad, and that there's and in lots of different ways. So I see myself in, I see him in how I parent Sutton in a lot of ways. Um, we had a really, ironically, when I was first born, I was his first, and he was like, I don't understand what a baby's and was really actually hands off in my sort of first year of being born. And then I don't know, he figured something out and it kind of clicked. And the moment that it clicked, he was then obsessed with me and I was completely besotted with him. And so we had this very unique bond and way of understanding each other. But what I also remember about my dad is that he was very much, and I know it for a lot of people, like he was Superman to me. Like if dad was there, everything was going to be okay. And I think that I very much have taken that and want that to be the case for my family. If I'm here, we will figure it out. I will make it happen. We will make it work. Um, Dad also has this really, he's very conscious of the language he uses around himself and how thoughts become things essentially. And so if you ever ask my dad, how are you doing? He will never say, I'm all right, I'm okay. He will always say either super, wonderful, excellent, or amazing. He will never give you a neutral response to that. And he's really conscious. He read a lot of Jim Rohn books when I was growing up. He was in sales, so I think it was that type of thing. But I see the impact that that's had on him as a person. People are always like, "Oh, he's so positive. He's so, always upbeat." And it's not that he doesn't have hard days or bad things
Mm.
happen, but he would always emanate that to me in being really conscious. And even to the point of if I woke up and on the way to school, if I was tired, he would never say, "Are you tired?" He would always say, "Do you need more energy?" Like
Yeah.
all of those
Okay.
things and how he would frame things for me. Um, and the other side is just this unwavering support and unconditional love. It was always, whatever you want to do, I support you. If you want to go and be a dancer, I support you. If you want to go and get a job in a bakery, I support you. If you're wanting to have a relationship with this person, I support you. Even after that person's broken your heart and you want to get back with them, I support you. Um, and would always give me really unbiased advice. And so I think I owe a lot of my self-confidence to him, because he is always, yeah, I've never had to question myself um, in his company ever.
So beautiful.
Yeah, he's a special dude.
He sounds it. He
He
sounds it.
really is.
Does happiness and success look and feel how you thought it would?
Yes and no. I think there's a version of me when I was in college training to be a performer, when everybody around you, the big goal is West End. That feels like what happiness and success is. The 20-year-old version of me, that's the only way I can feel happy. It's the only way I can measure my success is when I'm on a West End stage. I'm very aware that that's not the case. And so now successes to me is having somebody in a session go, oh my gosh, thank you, Tash. I've never thought of that way.
Mm.
I found this exercise really, really useful. Thank you. I'm definitely going to take that back to my organization. That's success for me. So every single day I get successes every single day. Happiness to me now is being in a position, and maybe this is also part of success, is being in a position that I can choose to mostly an extent of how much I work. I can, on a Monday, everyone else is diving into work emails. Every Monday, I'm either at story time or sing along with Sutton at 11 o'clock. So when you're emailing me and I'm not responding, that's why. It's because I'm sat in a little cafe doing story time with my 20-month-old daughter. And then we stay and we have lunch, and I don't rush home. We stay and we have lunch and a little picnic, and then we go home and I put her down for a nap. And then circa around 1:30, I'll open my emails for the first time on a Monday. And that to me is like, that's happiness, is being able to really have that and be able to spend the time with the people that care most without that burden or pressure of having to be somewhere else. And don't get me wrong, my life isn't without pressure, but I feel like I'm in control for a lot of the time in terms of what that pressure looks like. You know, it took us, we spent an hour and a half on the beach yesterday from like 3 till 4:30.
Doing hokey pokey on the beach. It sounds fun.
Literally.
Yeah.
And how many other people are in that position to do that on a Wednesday afternoon? Not many.
Thank you for sharing. My final question for this segment is, looking back so far, what are you most proud of to date?
I am most proud probably of getting through 3 days of labour to birth my daughter. Yeah.
3 days.
3 days. I'm not even lying. 3 days. It started on Friday night. She was born on Monday night. And it was a journey without this turning into a birth story. I'm most proud of the fact of during that time, I was so cognizant, and there was only one point where I really spiraled a bit and started to lose control of myself. But I'm just really proud of how I showed up for myself, how my body showed up for me, how my mental capacity showed up for me over those 3 days. And that I, not in a stubborn way, but I stuck to what I wanted, but also knew when I needed help. And it taught me a lot about myself. I'm sure there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who have potentially birthed another human who go, yeah, birthing a human will teach you a lot about yourself, and agree with that. But it taught me so much about my own mental power and the power of my mind, and also how incredible my body is and what it was able to achieve. And I was just, by the end of it, I didn't care what anyone else thought. I was really proud of myself and going through that journey. And then this amazing human popped out the other end of it. I wish she just popped out. It wasn't a pop out at all.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
Let's do it.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
The Colour Purple. It is my top 3. I've read the book, I've watched the movie, I've seen the Broadway show with Cynthia Erivo in it twice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen the remake?
Yes.
I've not seen it yet.
I just that I mean, it's like it feels like a Forrest Gump where it's like 10 different movies in one.
Mm.
But that movie, yeah, it's like it probably is my number one movie of all time. Um, it's so powerful for so many reasons. It's a story of strength, um, of action, of heartbreak, of injustice. It makes me infuriated whilst it also makes me laugh. It makes me cry. And I just think it is an example of so many people's stories. Um, my mum's included, like my family, people immediate to me. And I just think it's an incredible, incredible, whichever format you're watching it, viewing it, reading it, it's just an incredible story.
Yeah, it's come up on here before. So yeah, yeah, for
Fair.
sure. What's a saying you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
Oh, what's the saying? Oh, what's the saying I put in the bin? Um, make America great again. Put that one in the bin.
Straight in the trash.
My saying, I have it tattooed on me, where there's a will, there's a way. I
Okay.
live by that to its core. Where there's a will, there is a way.
Why does that speak to you so much?
I think it's because it's been exampled so much in my life and it's shown up for me. You know, I wanted to go to college. It's always been the case where there is the will to do something or achieve something, you will always find a way to do it. And I think my dad was a real amazing
Mm,
example of that to me growing up, is that he just always figured it out. He always found the solution, whether it was something really small, a bit of DIY, right through to really big things. How are we going to pay for this or how are we going to afford this? Um, and so I don't know, it's always been my center point. I literally have it tattooed twice on me as a symbol because it's 100% the saying that I've always lived by and it's always been proven to me.
what's been the best adventure of your life so far?
I mean, being a parent is definitely one. But I would say actually it was when I was the year that I went from 29 to 30. It was very close to the new year. My birthday's the 3rd of January. And for my 30th birthday, I actually chose to be on my own. And so I asked my parents, instead of throwing me a big party, instead of buying me an expensive gift, I would love to go traveling. And if you'd put some money towards that. And I went to Bali for 3.5 weeks. I landed on like the 28th of December. So the New Year's there and then into my birthday. And that experience was truly life changing. It was the first time I had gone somewhere so far away from home completely on my own. I'd gone and worked on cruise ships on my own, but you're still in a work environment, you're still protected. Someone knows you're showing up and they know where you are and you have to be here. And this was 100%. I could do what I wanted when I wanted. And I remember sitting there one night and I was like, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't have to go to bed right now if I don't want to. Like no one's telling me. Like I had complete autonomy and it was just the most incredible experience, adventure. And it opened my eyes up to, I don't know, like travel in itself, but also like what Tash could achieve on her own and how capable I was also on my own.
Yeah, I love solo traveling
Love it.
for that
I don't get to do
reason.
it anymore.
No, of course. Not for a while. Not for a
Not for a
while.
really long while.
What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Um, just three. Injustice, because I think it's definitely rooted in that. Um, Passionate and I mean it's kind of unexpected. I think that stands for me now. I think I'm unexpected for a lot of people, even today. Uh, but it's also definitely my origin story is very unexpected.
I'm here for it. Love it. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Oh, what exciting things. So actually personally, this is a big one. My wife and I are planning to move out of our 4-bedroom house in Margate and instead move into a camper van in April, as in like we've set the date. We've told the landlord, we're move into a camper van on the 12th of April and to travel around Europe for the next 10 months, full time in our camper van, Europe and the UK. Yeah, in the
That's
immediate.
so
I
exciting.
know. So all future sessions post April will be brought to you from the camper van.
Wow. I love that. Cannot wait. You must be so excited.
So excited. So excited because I think it's just that additional, like, our family is at its best when we're traveling. We absolutely, like, both Marta and I adore
Yeah.
traveling. We're at our best then as well. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited to bring all of it together. We've been on holiday with Sutton, but we haven't traveled with Sutton.
Yeah.
And I haven't like properly worked whilst traveling either. And also living in a tiny space. We'll see. But yeah, that's probably the biggest exciting thing coming up.
I mean, it sounds like such an adventure. Yeah. Can't wait. Can't wait to see that unfold.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure that there'll be loads of content around it as well.
1,000%.
Yes, obviously. What brings you joy?
Sutton, 100%. Like she's just, I know that's a real parent answer to give, but she honestly just brings me so, she's just the coolest human. I'm sorry. She is much cooler than me. She's just the coolest human on the planet. She just blows my mind every single day. Absolutely blows my mind. Says the funniest things, does the funniest things, and is just what I've noticed as well is really empathetic, and really sensitive. Comes and mummy cuddle, like I can see you're upset,
Yeah.
cuddle, and just wants to, yeah, she's just really beautiful soul. Absolute butter.
I wonder how much little Tash you are starting to see in Sutton.
According to my mum, a lot. She's
Okay.
like, oh my gosh, she's literally like, that's you, that's you. But also, according to my mum, she's even more intelligent than I was, apparently. She's like, no, you
Okay.
weren't doing that yet.
Right.
She's way better than you. She's like the
That's
upgrade of you.
the shade.
Literally.
And also just wait till that sarcasm comes
I
through.
know. I was like, mum,
Yeah.
is that a low-key read you've just given me there?
Um, let's just dive into some practical takeaways. Do you have
Mm.
any for anyone listening wanting to carve out a career in DEI inclusion generally?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I'm mentoring somebody on this right now. And I think that, some of the steps I've given them is D&I is a space that, I mean, there's a lot of people in it that even when they're not self-employed, they work within a company, but it can be quite isolating.
Mm,
And so I think that one of the big things is to find a network and a community of people within D&I, just because there are going to be days that are really, really hard. And you need to be able to find that support. But also from a business perspective, it'll be those people that are recommending you or reaching out to you for work or advocating for you in certain spaces, thinking about you when someone's looking for a panel event. Um, the other side of that, I'd say go to as many things as you can. And it doesn't have to be the paid conferences. It can be that somebody's hosting something, there's a conversation, there's a discussion happening around a topic, and just turn up. I think it gives you an opportunity to, this space is moving so quickly. And so it helps you to understand the landscape. It gives you new language. It helps you to learn. Um, and then also read or listen to podcasts like this, hear from other people and learn about other people's lived experience. I think the thing that fuels me most in this space is when I will hear of a story from somebody else who's not like me. And I'm like, that's infuriating. Okay, I'm now talking about you in that situation in every session I do because I
yeah.
cannot believe that that's the experience you're having. And I think I think the only way that you can keep the fire burning and keep the energy there is to continue to learn and connect with other people
Yeah.
who need support. And so that's the thing that always fuels me is maybe I'm feeling a bit like, meh, and then I'll have a really incredible conversation with somebody. Had it literally this week, we randomly connected on LinkedIn, decided to have a call, and I was like, oh my God, oh wow, like you're just a super cool human. Wow, and that's what you're doing. How can I support you? How can we have that? And that then re-energizes me. But all of these things circle back around. Um, I would also say massively in this is don't chase the money. Um, it's an area where there is budget to spend. People do have it. It may feel like not all the time, but, and my example is I have been asked to speak at events before where, you know, someone will come to me and they'll say, you know, how much is your fee? And I'll give my standard fee, and they'll come back and they'll say, we, you know, actually, like, normally we can only pay expenses. And I think, obviously, don't do this at the detriment to you. But for me, I'll always judge, like, what's the value that could be added for this business in what I can bring, and who needs to hear this conversation. And for a lot of the time, that outweighs the money for me. And so that's, the money will always, and maybe this is my dad speaking, like, it will always come back. It will always come around. If you put that out, it will always come back to you. And so there's often times where, not all the time, but when the ask is true and comes from the right place, versus like, oh, you know, I can see when I turn up, you're going to pay thousands of pounds for food and sandwiches to be bought in from Pret, but you're not going to have a budget for me to speak. No. Or you've paid this person, you're not paying this person. No. But when it comes from a real true place of, you know, a really small business, we're a really small charity, and we just, you know, I've been following you for a while and blah, blah, blah. Then I'm like, do you know what? Yes. Because that's why I got into this space, was to make a difference. It wasn't to earn lots of money and become rich. And the corporates can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They can pay the way.
Super. I mean, I love all of those practical takeaways. You know, showing up to events is a big one for me. It's how I've kind of like built my network, community connection, and the power of storytelling. Like,
yeah.
Love it. My final question for you is this: do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Yes. Wisdom I'm going to give is that and it's interesting, I'm currently doing this talk for students, and I think it's about, if you're trying to get somewhere, you're not quite sure how to get there, I think take a moment and look at all of the things that you offer and the skills that you have. I think about the skills that I bring to D&I, and if you were to, you know, look on one side, like, I didn't go to university, I don't have a HR background, I've never worked for a big corporation in HR or in business management, I've never led a team of, you know, 50 people in an office, but I have been on a stage in front of thousands. I've had to lead a team of performers. I've had to speak publicly. I've had to, 10 minutes before a show opens, adapt because somebody's gone sick or someone's got injured on the way to backstage, and so had to adapt. I've had to think very quickly, and I've also have a whole heap of lived experience in terms of who I am as a person, how the world's seen me, that I bring. So I think wisdom is, don't get bogged down with qualifications and what you don't have, and actually really focus on what is the uniqueness that you can bring to any given environment. Where there's a will, there's a way. I've lived by it for 37 years. It's never let me down. And probably one that I'm also saying a little bit for myself is, it will always get better. It may get worse, it may get harder in between, but it will always get better.
I think we need to hear that right now.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Tash, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest on Pause and Rewind. I have loved getting to know you more. Like, literally, I'm hoping to see you on stage in whatever capacity soon. But just thank you for being so wonderful to work with, for showing up the way that you do, and just being you.
Thank you. I've very much enjoyed this chit chat. I've learned even more about myself in sharing too. So I might even go back and have a listen and be like, oh yeah, take some notes for myself.
Please do. Speak to you soon. Cheers, Tash.
Bye.